Right. Commissioner Okon, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Eggenberger.
Here.
Commissioner Foster.
Here.
Commissioner Janowski.
Here.
Commissioner Okon here. Commissioner Singh.
Here.
Commissioner Watkins is absent. Commissioner Weber. Here. And Chairwoman Zuber.
Here. And we also have Patrick Sloan and Aaron Schluto here from the Township, and we have Laura Genovich here as our legal counsel this evening, so thank you very much. And do we have a motion for the minutes of June 28th?
So moved.
So moved. You want to move to support?
Support.
To move to approve them?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Eggenberger. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right, very good. How about the minutes of July 10th? Did anyone read the minutes of July 10th?
I move that we approve the minutes.
All right. All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Foster and support by Commissioner Weber. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. We have an agenda tonight. We have several items on it. Anybody want to move to accept it, or do we have anything to add?
We do have one deletion. The applicant for Wendy's has requested to be removed. They're still working on some things, so that'll be
I
tabled.
wish you would have taken my bet.
Well, anyway, there it is. They've requested to be tabled. They didn't include a date certain, so I'm not sure if they're going to be making revisions or what their plan is.
Okay. Can we ask them not to submit unless they're going to actually come?
Yes.
Okay.
Geez, I drove down there for nothing today.
Yeah, geez. All right, so we're taking them off. And we're gonna have Okay, very good. Is there anything else you need to say about the agenda, Patrick?
Nope. Everything else will just be reordered accordingly, so just that one change.
Okay, excellent. Anybody want to make a motion about the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Foster of approving the agenda as amended, I would gather, right? As amended? Yes, okay. Excellent. And anybody, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, very good. Patrick, do we have any communications to add to the?
No additional communications that we received. I did want to note that we're working with APA and MAP to renew the subscriptions. I think they expired end of June, so we're just working with them to make sure we renew those. I'm not sure if I didn't get the invoice or if it was sent elsewhere, but we're gonna lock that down and update the membership roster. So you'll be hearing soon on your updated memberships for APA and MAP. And then near the end of the agenda, when we discuss the master plan, at that point, we'll also want to discuss going forward if we want to schedule some work study meetings with the Planning Commission. Several years ago, the Planning Commission used to meet twice a month, both the first Monday and the third Monday. And that third Monday has since then been penciled in as an available date for the Planning Commission, but we haven't met on that third Monday regularly in several years. So with the master plan coming up and also some zoning ordinance amendments that are going to be coming down the pike, we might want to consider scheduling some work session meetings for some of the third Mondays coming up, or if there's a mutually agreeable date of the planning commissioners where we can get maximum attendance, we can look at alternate dates as well. So when we get to the master plan portion, we can discuss that in more detail.
All right, very good, thank you. So we have one item for a public hearing this evening. It is item number 121-RZ-7853. It's the Nemeti rezoning. Consider rezoning for parcel number 121-99-0007-000. This property is located on the west side of Denton Road between Geddes Road and Michigan Avenue. Property use is single-family residential. Patrick, tell us more, please.
Sure, thank you. The proposal for this parcel is to rezone it from R1 Single Family Residential to R2 Single Family Residential. And the property is .81 acres and is currently vacant. The applicant proposes to construct a detached single-family residential house on the site if the rezoning is approved. The parcel was previously owned by the owner to the north at 4130 Denton Road, which is also in the R1 zoning district, and that lot is 1.63 acres. In the current R1 zoning district, the minimum lot area requirement is 1 acre, and the minimum required lot width is 150 feet. And because the subject parcel was previously in single ownership with the parcel to the north, that makes this parcel that's subject to the rezoning a non-conforming parcel. And the zoning ordinance has a rule for non-conforming parcels, and it states that if there are 2 or more lots or combinations of lots with contiguous frontage and single ownership, if one of those lots does not comply with the area or the frontage requirement, then both lots are considered to be one undivided lot for the purpose of zoning. Now, this rule doesn't necessarily prevent a lot from being sold because there's nothing from a zoning standpoint during the selling process that we can do to impact that. However, at the land use and permitting process, that's often where we catch up with some of these items. So in order for the owners of the subject lot to obtain a permit to build a home, they have to go through the rezoning process. The current lot size is .81 acres, which would comply with the R2 zoning district. The R2 zoning district minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet, which is just under half an acre. And if it was rezoned to R2, the lot would not be able to be split because it would not have enough area or frontage for a split. So if this property is rezoned to R2, it couldn't be further divided than what it is right now as it's illustrated there on the map. The master plan currently recommends a density of 2 units per acre in this area. So the proposed rezoning is consistent with the future land use map and the density of that that's in our master plan. One item that we want to note is one of the criteria for the rezoning is the natural features considerations of the site. And according to FEMA, there are no floodplains that are on the site. But according to Eagle, the site has a substantial amount of wetlands and hydric soils. However, some of those Eagle maps can be general, and an on-site survey by a qualified professional would be required to determine the wetland boundaries, at which time the applicant would be required to obtain a permit from Eagle and/or apply for a wetland setback variance. So this identification of the wetlands would generally be required before a building permit is reviewed by the Engineering Services Division and the Building Inspection Services Division. So there may be some natural features impacts, but the permitting process would still be required nevertheless, whether this was a conforming lot or a non-conforming lot in terms of getting any kind of state permits that are necessary for development in and around a wetland area. So that's one item that we wanted to call out from some of the review criteria. Section 27.06D4 of the zoning ordinance consists of 10 standards of review prior to action on a rezoning application. And we've reviewed the 10 criteria, and our recommendation is that the proposed rezoning meets all 10 criteria, noting that some of the natural features impacts have to be determined by outside agencies during the permit process. And also noting that the proposed rezoning complies with the future land use map of the master plan, which I can bring up here on the screen just to illustrate it. This is the current map of the master plan here, and in this light orange area, it's a little bit difficult to see here, so I'll zoom at the bottom. The light orange area is classified as low-density residential, up to 2 dwelling units per acre. So the proposed R2 district is consistent with the underlying future land use designation of the master plan. So in conclusion, staff's recommendation is approval of the request to rezone the subject parcel to R2 as it meets the standards of the zoning ordinance for rezoning. That concludes our recommendation and report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Why would you rezone this rather than getting a bunch of variances, just out of curiosity?
I think if the applicant were to apply for a variance from the lot area for relief from the 1 acre requirement, I think that meeting a practical difficulty standard would probably be more difficult than rezoning the site. It would be an easier process in terms of the time frame. It would be a shorter time frame and probably a lower fee. But in terms of the standard of review, when we look at a variance, the first question would be, what is the practical difficulty that prevents them from using the property, and what other remedies are available to them? And I think what the ZBA may end up doing, if they were to get a lot area variance, would be to advise the applicant to seek a rezoning as the remedy to their issue to make it a conforming lot.
Thank you. Very good. Is the project representative here? Okay, could you step to the mic? We need to open a public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Janowski to open the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Sir, what's your name?
My name is Admirim, last name Nameti.
Good, thanks for coming. Do you have anything to add to what Patrick had to say?
No, I mean, he said it all. He helped me through this process, so if you guys can ask me something, yeah, I'll be happy to answer, but I guess I cannot say it better than him, so.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for coming. All right, anybody else from the public want to speak about this project or have a question or comment? No?
Close the public hearing.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ocon and support by Commissioner Weber to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, very good. Commissioner Singh, do you have any comments or questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Ocon?
No, it follows the master plan. I'm good.
And no questions.
Just kidding. All right, Commissioner Weber?
I don't have any questions.
All right, Commissioner Foster?
No questions for me.
Commissioner, oh, God, Cruz, thank you. I'm still learning everyone's name. Sorry.
So you know about the wetlands on your site as it was mapped on the inventory?
Many times that I've been around the property, if I can say a wetland is not on my property, it's more to the northwest side, which is outside of my, my property lane. I've seen it and it's there, but not on my property. I don't know, but if I have to go through the process and get what Mr. Patrick said about the eagle, then you guys are going to be the first one to know.
So it's not an easy process. Just on this map, it shows wetland all over the place. So you're likely going to have to hire a consultant. It can be done. I'm just kind of cautioning that that's part of the requirement. That's right, Patrick? It's still going to go through engineering.
Right. If it's rezoned, the applicant can apply for a permit, and it goes through both the engineering division and the building division. So it'll go to engineering for grading, utilities, and for the building division for the actual building permit and all construction codes. And during that process, normally during the engineering review, when they're looking at the grading permit, they look at potential wetland impacts. And with this coming up on the Eagle permit, they will most likely require a wetland consultant to map the boundaries of any wetlands there and determine the locations. And then if permitting is needed from the state, then they would proceed with that permitting process.
Yeah, that's all I got. Just wanted to caution you that it's not a very easy process.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was trying to point out. It's not something that I'm going to decide. I'm still going to go through the process with, probably again with Mr. Patrick and Ms. Sarah and with you guys in the future. So it's a process that I have to go through, and I have to go through, hopefully one thing at a time.
So hypothetically, you find out it's not easy, and then you back out, what happens? The property's rezoned and it stays rezoned? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it would stay rezoned, and the same rules would apply in terms of any future development proposal, where if someone wanted to build a house or potentially assemble it with adjacent properties for a larger development, the same rules would apply to it.
All I got.
Mr. Janowski? All right. I have no problem with it, so, anybody want to make a motion?
Come on, Nancy, it's an easy one.
All right, well, we'll give it a try. I move to recommend approval of the request to rezone parcel number 71-121-99-0007-000 from R1 Single Family Residential to R2 Single Family Residential, as the proposal meets the standards of Section 27.06D4 of the zoning ordinance as stated in the staff report.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Eggenberger and support by Commissioner Singh. Commissioner Okan, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Eggenberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Janowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Okan, yes. Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Chairwoman Zuber.
Yes. All right, very good. Congratulations.
Guys, for listening to me.
Oh, sure.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
And the next steps is this will proceed to the Township Board of Trustees, and because it's a proposed ordinance amendment, it'll have 2 readings. So we'll coordinate with the applicant on the upcoming meeting schedule for the Board of Trustees for the final action on the application.
Great, thank you. And our next item is old business, the Ford and Napier rezoning project. Item number 070RZ7754. We're considering rezoning for parcel number 070-99-0002-702 from RA Rural Agricultural to R2 Single Family Residential. The property is located on the south side of Ford Road, east of Napier. The proposed use is single-family residential. Patrick, tell us more, please.
Okay, thank you. At the meeting on June 5th of this year, the Planning Commission had reviewed the request, and a public hearing was held, and a public comment was received on the rezoning application. And at the conclusion of the public hearing, there were deliberations and discussion by the Planning Commission. And at the conclusion of the deliberations, the Planning Commission had adopted a motion to table action on the rezoning, subject to acquiring additional information on the following 5 items. The first is the Township Traffic Consultant's review of the traffic impact study. And in the packet this evening, there's a letter from Wade Trim, who is the Township's traffic engineering consultant, with their review letter on the traffic impact study. The second item was review by Canton Township's Engineering Services Division on the water and sewer capacity. And there are letters from both Wade Trim and OHM based on the water and sewer capacity, based on the system, and in one case, there was a model run. The third item is to obtain data from Canton Township's Public Safety Department regarding crashes in the area. And the Public Safety Department had issued a report looking at the crashes over the last few years near and at that intersection at the corner of Ford and Napier. The fourth item was to receive comment from DTE related to the electrical capacity. There's an email in the packet from the DTE service planner describing the process for obtaining feedback on the electrical capacity. And unfortunately, it looks like DTE would require approved site plans and an actual deed to the property before they go into the process of reviewing the plans and determining what the electrical requirements are, and then what system upgrades will be needed, if any, by the applicant. So that's one of those things where it looks like they have to go through the process, and then DTE makes sure that they comply with their requirements for the electrical capacity. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like during the rezoning process we'll be able to get answers to some of the questions that were raised during the June 5th public hearing regarding different power outages in the area in terms of the causes, the remedies, both short-term and long-term. And finally, fifth, the Planning Commission had required additional data for the wetlands, and the applicant has submitted a wetland survey of the site showing the delineation of the wetlands. So in summary, those 5 items have been submitted for more information. There's more information in the packet, as well as some staff comments on each item. And to summarize the request, the proposal is to rezone a 25.5 acre parcel on the southeast corner of Ford and Napier from RA Rural Agricultural to R2 Single Family Residential. The RA district has a minimum lot size of 40 acres, and the R2 district has a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. And based on a conceptual plan submitted by the applicant, the ultimate objective, if the property is rezoned, is to apply for a planned development with a density of 51 units on the lot, which is about 2 units per acre. So that summarizes the information received and the request, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Good, thank you, Patrick. And we have our project sponsor here. You want to add anything?
Good evening, yes. My name is Mike Knowles, N-O-L-E-S. I'm with the Umler Group, 49287 West Road in Wixom, and I am representing MI Homes this evening. David Straub sends his regrets. He tweaked his back earlier today and he's in much pain, but he sends his regards. So as Mr. Sloan indicated, we were here and tabled at the last meeting for some additional information. We have checked the boxes, at least in the attempt, and I think we have some good feedback from all parties other than DTE. I was most pleased with the traffic review. There were some glowing things to be said there, and also some challenges that we'll face during the site plan process. As we discussed last time I was here, this is a multi-step process. We'll have at least 4 public meetings to get through the rezoning part, should we be so fortunate. And then we'll have several for the site planning process and for the final site plan process. So you'll be seeing us and scrutinizing this to a greater degree as it moves through the process. Tonight we are again requesting rezoning from RA to R2. The comprehensive master plan, I know you're going to have some more discussions about that later this evening, and it's an ongoing revisioning of your community. The current master plan does designate this as 2 units to the acre. The rezoning from RA on this 25 acres is consistent with your comprehensive master plan. R2 would allow 2 units to the acre. And so if we are successful through the rezoning process, we'll move into the site planning process. And again, we'll have several challenges. As you saw from the wetland delineation, there's a couple spots of wetland. 2 are eagle regulated, 1 is not. You have already seen a concept plan, which you'll see that further progress in the next step of site planning, in which we propose to preserve the southwest corner of the site, the stream that crosses through it, and the woodlands in the corner. So we should be able to avoid any impacts in that particular area. We'll have to take a look at the isolated wetlands as well to see if we need to possibly do some reconfiguration or further analysis on those. I understand that this is not a site plan review, but I was well pleased with Wade Trim's comments on our frontage walk on both Ford Road and on Napier Road, as well as sidewalks on both sides of the community proposed, as well as a nature trail as a internal amenity for the development. More on that as we move into the site planning process. So again, traffic does talk about a left turn lane that would be required as part of the traffic analysis through the site planning process, and also some consideration for a right turn lane. But it does go through and indicate that those would be the required or recommended, I should say, improvements if this is to go into the site planning process. Utilities, it comes as no surprise, but it's always great to have the affirmation that public sewer and water is available to the site. As I mentioned, being in compliance with the Canton Comprehensive Master Plan. That document is used by your utility engineering departments and all your other departments to plan for the future. And so they obviously adequately planned utilities for this site. So we're not exceeding the designated density for the property. So that was a good affirmation. The crash data that was requested, you know, there's obviously a large concern. We heard it from the public. We heard it from the commissioners at the last meeting. That Ford Road is a very busy road from one end of Canton to the other. And in particular, Ford and Ridge Road is a close intersection that has had some challenges in the past, in particular with the charter school that is there, with the dropping off of the kids and such. Canton Public Safety did give the crash data. There were 16 crashes since 2017 in this particular intersection. 2 years had 4, most years had 2. The good news is that there's been none this year so far, knock on wood. And so the crash data is relatively stable, I would say. 17 looked like it was a big bump year, and the crash data, if you have it in your packet, does go into what types of issues caused those single car crashes, whether somebody crossed over the line or somebody failed to yield, and those types of things are spelled out in the crash data. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of a summary of where we left off and some of the investigation that you asked us to do. This is similar to the case that you just had, complying with the underlying zoning. It's different from the case that you just had because that's a single lot. And this is, you know, proposed to be 51 units consistent with that density. And again, you'll have several cracks at that. We'll have to bring our A game when we bring the site plan forward. But we respectfully request recommendation for approval for rezoning this evening. Mr. Sloan has identified the 10 criteria that are required for findings for rezoning and has indicated that we meet all of those requirements. So thank you for that, Mr. Sloan, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Danowski, do you have any comments or questions? All right, very good. Commissioner Cruz.
So there's a wetland in the southeast corner, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So I just looked at a potential challenge. This is going to be at site plan development. Your utility connections are going through that wetland, and so that's going to be a challenge. You're going to have to go around those wetlands somehow. And also, are those wetlands going to wipe out any of your lots?
It's definitely a possibility. There's a lot of things that can wipe out our lots along the way. As Mr. Sloan indicated, we're going to be seeking a PDD when we go to the site plan process. We may be able to change the configuration slightly to avoid that. The intent of the PDD is so that we can get a 38.5% open space, so that we can have that central park and that preserved natural features down in the southwest corner. You're correct, Commissioner Cruz, that the wetland in the southeast corner does propose a challenge in site planning, so we'll have to take a look at that. Certainly for the utility connection, we probably would get a permit through Eagle in the 303 process through that existing easement. But you're probably right that we may have to do some reconfiguration of our lots in that corner to avoid further impacts.
The other item is regarding the traffic report. Wade Trim recommends a right turn lane at the exit. What's your thoughts on that to improve the exit so you can make a left and right?
Yes, Commissioner
on
Cruz,
the-
that's a great question. If I read it correctly, they recommended a left turn lane, but they indicated that a right turn lane would actually help things even more than the recommended left turn lane. So the left turn is warranted, which means it's essentially mandatory, and the right turn lane is a good idea. And I think good ideas, particularly when you bring forward a site plan that we're asking for a PDD that's supposed to show public benefits, I think that is a fantastic idea. And I would investigate that further with MI Homes when we bring forward the site plan.
So just because it's not warranted doesn't mean it won't improve the entrance and exit to your site.
Agreed.
And it's 55 miles an hour. Even Beck Road has decel lanes.
Yeah.
And that's, higher volume but low speed. People are flying down this road. They're doing 55, 60. I do 70, but, and so the traffic report can't analyze a decel lane to prevent crashes. It doesn't do that, but I think it's a better design.
I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner. We've had in recent years developments as small as 12 units that ended up with Axtel deceleration lanes. As many of the commissioners and the public indicated, there's more and more traffic on the roads all the time, and you really have to be careful with that. It serves a dual purpose. Not only is it safe for the construction process, the development process, and for the long-term residents, but it also creates a better entrance feature for the neighborhood. It creates a greater access presence, and I've always been an advocate for adding those Axtel deceleration lanes, and in this particular case, probably the left turn lane as well.
All I got.
Commissioner Foster?
I don't really have a question. I do agree with what Commissioner Cruz said, and I want to thank the planning staff for getting answers to the questions that the board, or that the commission raised at our previous meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Weber?
I guess I'm going to echo something that's already been said, but just want to emphasize it. First of all, there's nothing, I know there's nobody, I don't believe there's anyone here who spoke against this rezoning at the last meeting, but to those people, I understand why you're opposed to it and that sort of thing, but given everything that's happened around this property in recent years, it's hard to exclude this property from this and to deny this rezoning. But that being said, I will absolutely be interested to see what happens with the traffic recommendations when the site plan comes forward. Truthfully, I believe there should be a left-hand turn lane all the way from the Ridge Road intersection to Napier Road. There's enough traffic that's turning left on Napier now that I think it's warranted as well. And I absolutely agree with Commissioner Cruz that there should be a decel lane coming from the west into the subdivision. I noticed that there is a decel lane at the intersection of Ford Road and Napier. If it's there, it only makes sense to do it at the entrance to this development as well. And I think both the left turn lane and the right turn lane are critical elements to this.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggenberger?
I also want to thank the Planning Commission for getting the information that we asked for, and agree with Commissioner Weber that I don't think there's any way that we can deny this given the surrounding areas and them fitting all the 10 requirements. And I look forward to seeing how they end up putting this together and letting us be involved in how it looks. Thanks.
Commissioner Ocon?
Just echo the same thing everybody else is saying. I appreciate the staff getting all the answers to us, and I think this is going to be a good project. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Singh?
Yeah, no question. Thank you very much.
All right, I also, I appreciate all the additional information, and like Commissioner Weber said, I feel for the people who spoke against this at the last hearing where we talked about this project, but the reality is that the adjacent properties, at least West Bridge, thank you, got a zoning variance for the same exact thing years and years ago. So was in 2004, I think you said in your email.
Yeah, our previous report in June had cited that as a surrounding parcel, or collection of parcels that were rezoned back in the 2000s to R2. And
Yeah.
I think they were rezoned, they were zoned RA, R1 at the time. And then we had cited another case nearby, I think around the same time, where it was rezoned to R2 as well. So there's been some precedent in the area for rezoning to R2.
Yeah. Yeah, and just as an explanation to the public, we can't just make a decision based on our emotions about things. We have to find facts, and if the adjacent properties have all been rezoned the same as what our petitioner is asking today, it's hard to justify saying no to somebody who's surrounded by other properties where they did get their zoning variance, so, or there's rezoning, sorry. So with that, does anyone want to make a motion? Practicing your dramatic reading, right?
Sure. I move to recommend approval of the request to rezone parcel number 0709900020702 from RA Rural Agricultural to R2 Single Family Residential as the proposal meets the standards of section 27.06 D4 of the zoning ordinance as stated in the staff report.
Support.
I know that wasn't.
It was pretty good. All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Foster. Any further discussion? All right, Commissioner Okon, could you call the vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Eggenberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Janowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Okon, yes. Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Zuber.
This Very good. Motion carries. So next steps, Patrick?
Next steps will be similar to the previous application. This rezoning application will proceed to the Township Board of Trustees for final action. Because it's an ordinance amendment, there will be 2 readings on the ordinance at upcoming board meetings. And if the rezoning is successful, the applicant will come back to the Planning Commission for site plan review and perhaps plan development district review, at which time we're going to take a deeper dive into some of these elements of information that we've requested here at rezoning. So this information will come back, and additional site plan related questions that are appropriate at that time will be raised.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you very much for your support, and we will try to bring our A game for site plan. Thank
Okay,
you.
Very good. We'll look for it. Thanks. All right. Our next item on the agenda is going to be renumbered number 3. It's item number 005ZCC 7830, and that is Shredder Indoor Ski and Snowboard School. We're considering a parking modification on parcel number 0005. 020017 I might have had an extra 0 in there. That is also known as 8351 Rhonda Drive. The property is located on the west side of Rhonda Drive between Joy Road and Kopernik Road. The proposed use is an indoor ski and snowboard school. Patrick, please tell us more.
Sure, thank you. This application is unique, and also the use is unique. The application is unique because it comes under a certificate of zoning compliance, which is an application that is approved by staff at the staff level. And the reason that this particular application is before the Planning Commission is that there's a modification request for the parking. And to start off, the property is zoned LI, light industrial, and it was previously occupied by McMahon Helicopter. So it was a large industrial building with a helicopter pad on the west side close to Medetol Airport. And indoor recreation uses are permitted uses in the light industrial district. The light industrial district, a lot of the buildings are very conducive to indoor recreation because a lot of the buildings have open floor plans and high ceilings, so it can be used for a number of indoor recreation uses. When the conversion happens from an industrial facility to an indoor recreation facility, the biggest issue that comes up is parking, because the parking requirements for indoor recreation are much higher than an industrial warehouse facility. So for that reason, we're here before the Planning Commission this evening to consider a modification to the number of parking spaces. Based on the existing and the proposed use for the subject building where the proposed use is going, and the building to the east, which is a separate building, but it's on the same parcel, there are 100 parking spaces required by the zoning ordinance standards. And that's for the entire parcel for both buildings. The site currently has 68 parking spaces, and because the indoor recreation use will increase the number of parking spaces then required, the applicant is requesting a modification from the parking standards. And the zoning ordinance, in the same section that has the parking regulations, it also has language that allows the Planning Commission to modify the number of parking spaces based on demonstrated traffic data. In this case, we've looked at probably 31 aerial photos taken of this site between 2014 and 2023, and the building to the east has been less than half full each time. And the subject building, we think that it'll be rare that that building has its parking lot full, but there may be cases when the recreation use is at capacity, or there's some kind of indoor event where there's an excess of cars, in which case they would be parking in the parking lot that services the east building. So based on demand, we think that there's sufficient parking on the site to allow for the existing and proposed uses. The reason, again, that this is with the Planning Commission is in the parking article of the zoning ordinance, it states that whenever the use of a building structure or lot is changed, parking facilities shall be provided as required by this ordinance for the new use, regardless of any variance which may have been in effect prior to the change of use. So that's why there's a zoning compliance that comes to the Planning Commission. Usually you see these in the form of a site plan where there's some site development proposed. But in this case, there's really no site development. It's the reoccupancy of an existing building. The occupant load of the building has been submitted with the floor plan, which includes an occupant load of 55 people. We think that's a pretty high occupant load, but it's nonetheless required by code in order to determine sizing of the building and use. Very rarely does a building like this approach its occupant load, so we think that it probably wouldn't approach it, but if it does, based on the formula for the parking spaces, we think that the existing lots on the site would accommodate the peak use. The plan submitted by the applicant shows 7 new parking spaces along the south side of the site, which is west of the building. This is just a proposal, and if there's a demonstrated parking shortage, we would recommend adding 7 new parking spaces along the south side of the site. That's west of the building to be outside of the traffic aisle. But the 7 parking spaces that are proposed on the plan, we think that that particular location could be problematic based on potential contractor storage in the back and vehicle circulation. But there's nevertheless room to put additional parking behind the building. It's just a matter of where and making that work with the other on-site uses. And then the other item in our report is with the customer traffic increasing to the site, we recommend that a new lighting and photometric plan be submitted that meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And a photometric plan is something that can be reviewed administratively and approved by staff so that it meets the zoning ordinance. In addition to parking, outdoor lighting is usually the other issue that comes up when an industrial building is converted to recreation, because you have customers walking in and out of the building, sometimes at night. So the traffic and pedestrian access crossing the parking lot is increased. So with that, our recommendation is approval for 68 parking spaces as illustrated on the layout plan for the existing and proposed uses, subject to all state, county, and township requirements, and subject to the following 3 conditions. The first is pursuant to the zoning ordinance. If the Planning Services Division staff determines that the parking demand exceeds the capacity of the parking lot, then the property owner must construct parking spaces necessary for future traffic after obtaining site plan approval for the same pursuant to section 27.02 of the zoning ordinance. So that first condition allows for, if there's a demonstrated demand that exceeds the capacity of the lot, that allows the township to enforce the production of a site plan that would allow for the overflow to be accommodated on-site through additional parking spaces. And there's sufficient space on the lot to meet that standard, so that's why we recommend that condition. The second recommended condition is removal of the fence that separates the east and west buildings to allow overflow parking for the west building to park on the east side of the site with better visibility to the front door. In the past, we feel this fence was probably necessary because they were launching helicopters from the west side, so there was a major security issue. With that no longer there, we think that the fence can be either entirely or substantially removed. And the third recommended condition is submittal of a new lighting and photometric plan that complies with section 2.13 of the zoning ordinance. So that concludes our staff review, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, and our project sponsor is here. So do you have anything to add to what Patrick said?
Well, good evening. Thanks for your time. I'm Mikey Duffield. I'm the owner-operator of Shredder. And Mr. Sloan kind of hit the nail on the head with what we're looking for and what we're trying to do. So.
Very hard to hear you, just so you know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The mic is pretty sensitive. I think you might be talking a little quietly.
Yeah, I apologize.
That's okay. So I know I'm dying to know how you do indoor skiing and snowboarding training.
It's with ramps and a gym. So it's going to be a bigger open area for children 1 to 10. And it's really just teaching them the basics of how to ski, taking out the outdoor weather and the elements out of it, a fun, safe indoor environment, and pulling them around on the skis just so they get comfortable being in the boots and in the bindings. And then we'll have a 6-foot tall ramp and a 12-foot tall ramp that has a material that's kind of like a turf that's frictionless enough to slide on, but also has some grip to be able to learn to turf. So it's 40-minute classes, and you sign up for a 10-week session, and there's 3 different blocks depending on the age that you're in for the type of lesson instruction you're going to get.
Awesome, thank you. Very interesting. That would have been fun to do when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I just went to the
definitely.
bunny hill.
Yep.
So, very good, thank you. All right, commission, anybody have anything to say?
First of all, am I wrong, or is it unusual to handle this way as opposed to, and I know this is unique to our zoning ordinance, but typically wouldn't something like this be handled through a variance?
That's correct. In a lot of communities where the parking standards are fixed, just like they are in our ordinance where there's a formula, the only remedy for an applicant is to apply for a variance. And so in some communities, a lot of the variances they get are parking lot variances where it's very use and site specific. One of the unique items in our zoning ordinance that we're starting to see in more zoning ordinances is to, rather than require people to go through the variance process and meet those practical difficulty standards, which are much more difficult than a modification here, Canton's ordinance puts that in the hands of the Planning Commission. So it's still the right of someone to apply for a variance. If they choose, they can choose to apply for a variance, or if they don't get relief from the Planning Commission, the variance is also an option. This modification option is just something that's a little bit easier for an applicant to get through, and the Planning Commission is probably better equipped than the ZBA to handle parking modifications because you see so many site plans and uses that you're accustomed to seeing demands.
My other question, and maybe this is both for Patrick and the petitioner, the former helipad, is there a planned use for that, or could that be developed for more parking?
It probably,
You mind if I take it?
Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Thank you. There is room for it for additional parking if needed. We are only taking access for half the building. The other half is going to a fencing company, and they're planning to use that for some storage and laydown facility aspects. So they're planning to use some of that area, and they will have trucks coming in for deliveries that would need some of that spot as well. So in the future, as Mr. Sloan has said, if we get to the point of exceeding demand and needing to add parking, that will be taken into account in that site plan of where it would be, so traffic and deliveries can be maneuvered around easily and still have the right parking.
Last thing I have is, I absolutely agree with removal of that fence, whether it's needed or not. It looks pretty bad. It needs to come down. So,
That's old.
Other than that, I'm excited to see how you develop this.
Where is the fence?
Between the two buildings.
Just between the two buildings, like
Like, you can see the
that vertical line? Oh,
Yeah, so it's right
The
here.
heavily pixelated line. Does the middle row of parking spaces, is that on the east side of the fence? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't drive by. Very good. Anybody else have anything?
Patrick, you said they're adding 6 or 7 more parking spots somewhere than what is existing. Where is that being added?
So on the, so here's the building. And farther west, there's an area for 7 new parking spaces. And we recommend not including those at this time, just because if cars are parked in all of them, there's a 30-foot wide circulation, but there has to be a turn that's made, which if there's a fencing contractor, that could be problematic. So what we would prefer to see is for these 7 spaces to not be put in at this time, for the site to be established, and if the fence contractor goes in, that use can be established. And if there's an overflow in parking at that time, pursuant to the ordinance, we can address any shortfalls and then figure out where the site is at that point and where the appropriate area would be for more spaces.
We will check at that time where those parkings will go, or do we have any plan right now? Okay, if that happens, what do we do?
At this point, we don't have that. This is the contingency plan right now. Our concern is that if there's a fence contractor in the rear and there's trucks going in and out, this site may still work, but we may want to see maybe the parking spaces moved westward, or if they're on the southern part of the building, maybe have them perpendicular to that rear side of the building. Or if there's some other arrangement that can be made with the operators of the adjacent building, where whether it's peak hours or trying to change class times. Sometimes some of these rec facilities, if they just move their class times 15 minutes one direction or the other, because the heaviest times are when there's the pickup drop-off times. So there's a lot of different strategies we could use. There's definitely space in the rear. It's just a matter of what the needs of the fence contractor are and how we can resolve it if that time comes.
What are the chances, do you think, that that will happen, that we'll need more parking spot at that area? Since we have, satellites showing that it's only half full most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time it's far less than half full. I think it's unlikely that we would see a parking shortage. I think if the building were to be used for something like indoor soccer, where there's overlapping use and it's a heavily used operation, or something that is a very intense indoor recreation where it's not taken up by large equipment like this particular use, there would be the potential for a lot of people at one time. But I think based on the nature of this particular use, I think we'll be under capacity by quite a bit.
How many kids will be in a class?
4. 4 per class. It's a 40-minute block, and then there's a 20-minute break in between. So at our max capacity, we could overlap by 20 minutes and have 8 at a time in the building.
The adjacent building owner or occupant amenable to sharing parking?
I believe so. It's all one parcel too, so.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, it's one parcel. Landlord has a shared agreement of parking, kind of first come, first served with it. So there's no assigned spaces for anything. Excuse me, no assigned spaces anywhere. And I have been in chats with the fencing company as well. And part of our lease agreement with the landlord to split the space up, we have worked out what kind of parking arrangement we would have. And he will have 2 employees throughout the day. Trucks parked overnight, and then those trucks would go and do the projects throughout the day. So.
Classes in the evening primarily?
Sorry?
Are your classes primarily in the evening?
All day. Starting at between 8 and 9, it can go to 6, 7, depending on when demand. We're still fluxing that to see when capacity is going to be and what we're going to hit here compared to where this started in Colorado. So it'll be kind of up in the air and trying to fit it in where it's going to be.
Anybody else? Want to make a motion, anyone?
separating east and west buildings to allow overflow parking. The west building will park on the east side of the site with better visibility from the front door. And number 3, submittal of new lighting plan and a floor plan that complies with section 2.13 of the zoning ordinance.
Very good.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Janowski and support by Commissioner Weber. Any further discussion? All right, Commissioner Okan, could you call the vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Cruz? Commissioner Engenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Janowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Okan, yes. Commissioner Singh?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
And Chairwoman Zuber?
Yes.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Much. Thank
Sounds
you for your time.
interesting. All right,
you.
thank you. Very good. All right. We have one more item under new business, and that is now item number 4. It's number 058-SPX-7868. Huntington Bank, consider site plan on parcel number 058-99-0003-717. That is also known as 45375 Ford Road. The property is located on the south side of Ford Road between Sheldon and Canton Center Roads. The proposed development is a new dumpster enclosure. Tell us more, Patrick. Can't wait.
Well, usually dumpster enclosures for commercial industrial sites are approved by staff. And the difference with this one is because there was a variance obtained for this dumpster enclosure, the site development is done by the Planning Commission in terms of the plan review. And looking at the aerial site here, the property had changed in recent years from a TCF bank to a Huntington Bank. And along with that, Huntington Bank's needs for a trash enclosure are no longer just using the totes, but having a dumpster enclosure. It's somewhat similar to the property to the east, which is Chase Bank. And currently, Chase Bank, if they have an enclosure, it's very small, but in their recent plan update that the Planning Commission reviewed recently, they're putting in a larger dumpster enclosure at Chase Bank based on their needs. So for the bank needs for a dumpster enclosure, both banks are similar in terms of wanting dumpster enclosures. And we did ask if they could share one, but 2 banks sharing one, it just doesn't work out. So Huntington Bank has sought to put in its own dumpster enclosure, and it's on a corner lot. And the zoning ordinance requires that dumpster enclosures be in the rear or the side yard. And looking at the entire rear yard of Huntington Bank, it's the drive-through for the ATM machines, and the side yard is also the drive circulation. So at the May 11th ZBA meeting of this year, the ZBA approved a variance from this section of the ordinance to allow the installation of the dumpster enclosure within the front yard along Canton Center Road, subject to the dumpster enclosure being located at least 25 feet from the southern lot line. And the proposed enclosure on the plans is proposed to be about 40 feet from the southern lot line. So there's plenty of distance from this access aisle that goes into the Meyer site, where it's going to be less visible from the access aisle of seeing the dumpster enclosure. And there's existing vegetation along the frontage of Canton Center Road that'll help screen the enclosure. The enclosure will be constructed of brick. It'll be 8 feet high, so it'll comply with the standards of the zoning ordinance for that. So considering the corner lot and no practical area to put a conforming dumpster enclosure on the site, the Zoning Board of Appeals had approved the variance to locate it in the southwest part of the site. Another part of this request is on the original plan, there were 54 parking spaces approved, and there's a proposal to remove 3 spaces to include the dumpster enclosure. 2 of the spaces will be for the dumpster enclosure. There's 1 on the north side of the site that's proposed for removal to allow for wider barrier-free spaces. As a result, there were 54 spaces required on the original plan, and removing 3 reduces it below what the ordinance requires. So we recommend the proposal to lower the parking to 51 spaces for the lot. And looking at the parking generation manual from ITE, the demands for parking for a bank are lower. It seems like some of the higher examples would be about 48 spaces, which is less than what's proposed here for a similar size bank. But even banks that we see in Canton Township in recent years, the parking lots are rarely full. They're usually far less than half full because so many people do banking through the ATM aisle or on their phones. So the parking demands for banks are very low. So any reduction in parking like this, we support. So our recommendation is approval of the amended site plan for the financial institution use, including the approval of the 51 parking spaces and approval of the dumpster enclosure. So one thing that we'll want to note in the model motion that we must not have added, but it's approval of the site plan amendment application for the financial institution use, and we can add there for the dumpster enclosure, just so that we're specific. So that concludes our comments, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. And you must be the project sponsor. By
I am.
process of elimination, I sort of figured that out, but awesome. What is your name, sir?
My name is Justin Remner. I am.
Sorry, what was your name?
Justin Remner.
Dustin, thank you. Mm-mm.
The bank puts in the dumpster. We don't want to have our cleaning company have to take the trash in their own personal cars to drive it to, say, another location or anything to throw our trash away.
Sorry, it's very hard to hear you. I think I got the gist of what you're saying, but can you speak a little closer to that mic or just pick it up a little more? That's better, thank you.
So in being that we're on a corner lot, the only places we could put the dumpster would be in one of the main roads viewing, which I know is the ordinance that it's not supposed to be there. So that's where we got that approved. And then right now, it's just the fact that it's going to take up 3 of our parking spots. So we want to make sure that that's going to be approved to where we'll still have enough parking spots that are required. So.
Okay, very good, thank you. Commission, anybody? I'm always in favor of less parking spaces. I mean, I can't imagine that, I've never seen any more than a few cars in your lot there, so.
Yeah, and the staff really just parks on the side here,
Yeah.
and that even doesn't take up all those spots either, so it's.
Okay, yeah.
The logic of, I mean, why not put it in the very corner? Because now you have 3 spaces that are kind of wasted, like no one's going to use those 3 spaces. But is there a reason that you put the dumpster?
Well, we wanted to make it, we didn't want it obviously in the front,
Oh, the site
right on the
plan?
main road. We want, it's going down in the corner here.
Yeah, could you, Patrick, there we go.
Those 3 spaces right there?
Is that a zoning board of appeals requirement that it not be closer than 40 feet to the property line
That's an ordinance requirement.
in the ordinance?
ZBA through it, aren't
Yeah, what's that all about? Yeah,
Well, you can come in, go straight, back out, then exit.
but that,
Curious, I mean, either way, it's a
that
weird
lane,
placement.
isn't that lane between the horizontal lane between the, yeah, that, thank you. Isn't that one way
That's a one-way?
going that way?
One way going into the drive-through,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So all those lanes go that way, so you can't even get a truck in there.
And we wanted to, when we reviewed the variance request, we wanted this at least 25 feet off of the southern lot line so that there was a setback there, and when someone's driving in and out of the site, it's not a primary thing that people see as they're going through the site, because it's a heavily trafficked drive, so we wanted it set offset quite a bit.
Well, along the lines of getting rid of parking, I mean, this would probably be I don't know how you'd handle this, but Commissioner Cruz is probably right. Those 3 spaces.
No one's going to park there.
No one's probably going to park there. Tear that pavement out and just add to the landscape buffer there.
Not yet. I think
I'm just, I guess,
Commissioner Weber just threw out an idea there.
that's, I don't know if we consider that a rhetorical question or a legitimate.
So the dumpster's taking up 2 spaces, is that right?
Right.
Take 3 when you, yeah.
That's not what's
Also,
shown.
no one
It's-
ever. Front doors are all the way on the other side of the building.
The staff report said it would take up 2, and then the third space is being lost for additional accessible parking spaces. Is that the case?
Yeah, the way that it was, the way that it's drawn up, there were 3 spaces here and then a width of 13 feet, and then the spaces continue north. So when we counted, we found that there were just 2 spaces removed there. But I don't know if the applicant this evening could commit to whether they would remove the 3 spaces. That might be up to Huntington Bank. But what we could do is, the proposal here shows 48 proposed spaces. I wouldn't see any issue of having a further parking reduction to 45 spaces, and then if they wanted to reduce that, they could just do that as a plan amendment and not necessarily have to come back for a further parking reduction.
Fine. It's
Yeah.
going to look better, too. I mean, if you're not going to use those 3 spaces, have a landscape buffer.
Yeah, just increase that landscape island to come in. Well, that's going to happen either way. Anybody else on the commission have anything to say? How about a motion? And don't forget to say that it's for the parking.
Patrick, you said you want to add something to the motion, or as,
Yeah, just in the model motion to state that the site plan amendments for the dumpster enclosure and parking reduction, and then in the model motion, it states approval of 51 spaces. So I miscounted, I thought it was 48, but 51 spaces. So
we'll do it to 45 now?
could either go to 48 if there were the 3 removed, or some number less than 48. But I think if we went with 48, that would account for the removal of 3 spaces to the south if they ever wanted to. So replacing 51 with 48.
I move to approve the site plan amendment application for the financial institution use on parcel number 058-99-0003-717 at 45375 Ford Road, including approval of 48 parking spaces pursuant to section 4.01C6 of zoning ordinance.
Would you be willing to amend that to include language that this is limited to the dumpster enclosure? Patrick you suggested that we add that
Yeah,
language
sure,
in there.
yeah, that's,
Have a second.
Well, wait, how is that getting worded then? I move to approve this.
Site plan amendment application for the dumpster enclosure for the financial institution. Is that sufficient? Is that acceptable?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Singh and support by Commissioner Okan. Any further discussion? Commissioner Okan, could you please call the vote?
Yes. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Engelberger.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Janowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Okan, yes. Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Chairwoman Zuber.
Yes. Motion carries. All right, next steps, Patrick?
The applicant will proceed to the Engineering Services Division and Building and Inspection Services Division for the permitting. So we can also ask Huntington Bank about, as part of that project, if they want to remove the 3 spaces, they have the authorization with the parking reduction and making that part of the project. And
Excellent.
hopefully they'll go with it, because otherwise you're just having an area that no one will park unless they want to keep it for some reason.
Okay, very good, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. And our next item on the agenda is miscellaneous. It is the master plan discussion, and I'm sure Erin has some fun things to share with us.
Fun things to share. Hello, good evening, everyone. So I just want to reference the memo in your packet. So it's been a very exciting, fun a couple of months for planning staff. We concluded the stakeholder discussions with Canton residents, business owners, property owners. And as I've mentioned before, they were kind of separated into two overarching categories. So we had a group of discussions with people that were focused on location, community members. So that was DDA, the chamber, people in Northwest Canton. They had come before here previously for a rezoning application, and they had a lot of thoughts and ideas on their particular area of the community, so we wanted to make sure we talked to them, people in Cherry Hill Village, et cetera. And then we had more topic-based discussions, so people who are interested in a specific planning topic, such as housing in neighborhoods, commercial corridors, transportation, environmental preservation, and more. So we had about 15 separate stakeholder discussions that we completed between the months of May and July. So we've been really, really busy and talking with people. It's been a lot of fun, and we had a lot of really great feedback and a lot of great participation. So some of the feedback that we did receive over the past couple of months has been largely positive. People like living here. They want to come here and they want to be a part of it. However, they did note that there's lacking of community spaces for people to go to. They end up leaving the community to go to either Plymouth or Northville or Ann Arbor for walkable, fun, vibrant places for them to go. Others have noted that they're dissatisfied with the amount of traffic on many of the roadways, which, you know, it's not really something that we can turn back, but it's something that we want to make sure we focus on and how we can plan developments appropriately. And there was a lot of discussion and focus on natural preservation and making sure that we encourage responsible development in the community. So even though some people came with really passionate ideas, they all really wanted to be part of this project and part of this process. So even those who had previous dealings with developments and things that maybe didn't turn out so positive for them, they left these discussions feeling very, overall, feeling pretty positive about the project and how we were moving forward, and certainly at the level of engagement that we've been doing over the past year. So with the conclusion of the stakeholder discussions that took place a couple weeks ago, that largely ended the public engagement sessions for the master plan. We've been talking with members of the public for over a year now, so at some point we kind of have to put a stop date on it. Now, that doesn't mean that we are done talking to them in general. We're still having our master plan advisory board meetings and planning commission meetings, so the public is still welcome to come to these. And once we have drafted some text, some maps, and some have formulated some ideas there, we are planning on scheduling an open house for members of the public to come and see what we've been doing and getting to garner some additional feedback that way. The Master Plan Advisory Board continues to meet. So on July 13th, they met and discussed transportation and neighborhood nodes. It was a great conversation. It actually went over the 7 o'clock hour, so we had to stop our discussion a little bit early. So we'll continue that discussion when we meet this Thursday. And we will also start discussing housing and neighborhoods. We only have a couple of more meetings left before the end of the year, so we're kind of wrapping up the Master Plan Advisory Board as well. And then jumping down to Planning Commission review, as you noted, and I'm sure you noted in the packet, there were a number of materials related to Cherry Hill Village. At the last Planning Commission meeting, I had included some draft goals and objectives that had come out of all of our Master Plan Advisory Board and stakeholder discussions related to Cherry Hill Village. So we had some draft goals and objectives that we wanted to get your feedback and input on. But it was noted at the previous meeting that the Planning Commission didn't have all of the information and all of the feedback and the notes from those stakeholder discussions and presentations. So I've included all of those in the packet for you. There's a lot of it there, a lot of presentations and a lot of notes there. So I'd be happy to go over anything with you, but we'd like to get any feedback or discussion materials on the draft goals and objectives for Cherry Hill Village. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or explain anything further if you have. Thank you.
Buddy, got any feedback for Aaron?
I saw some rogue communication in regards to the parking garage on Facebook going on. Do we look at that or adapt that, or do we just let the people go?
Well, what we were saying in the meetings is there was a lot of interest or a lot of reservation related to that parking garage. And what we kept saying over and over and again is the conceptual design for Cherry Hill Village, the Town Square project, it's pretty picture at this point, right? Everything is very conceptual. So while we want to continue to move forward in a certain aspect, that rendering as it is drawn right now is not going to be the exact thing that is drawn. It's not a site plan. It's not for approval at this point. But what it does do is that it puts that as kind of a placeholder for us to look at parking in the future. So when we start looking at the phases of how the Town Square project could be implemented, we want to make sure that we do it in tandem with making sure we have sufficient parking for people to come in. Because what we don't want to do is have it be a burden where people don't want to go there, or for all the parking to spill over into the residential areas and be a burden to the people who live there. So it's really a placeholder for us to make sure that we study it in more detail when we start getting to that part of the project. But the entire Town Square project is going to be done in phases. It's not all going to be done at once like that. But again, it's just a pretty picture at this point.
Wondering how the people were, because they weren't very receptive.
No, but once we talked about it in that context, they did understand that it's not necessarily going to be built that way.
Okay.
It doesn't look into other alternatives such as surface parking elsewhere. Some of those developments may not take place exactly the way it is on that rendering, on that drawing. So there may be surface lot opportunities. There may be an opportunity for a two-story garage with some commercial on the bottom, which wasn't depicted in that rendering. So they still weren't exactly thrilled and happy about it, but they understand that this is not a site plan or a construction rendering that's going to be built exactly that way. But it was important to continue to have those conversations. Yeah.
There's going to be more surface parking created from that building that's next to Indigo, right? Where the township just acquired that building, that garage on Cherry Hill.
Yes, the intent is to have some surface parking down there as well. Mm-hmm.
So given the plan that everyone's conceptualizing here, and given the kind of activities that everyone's envisioning taking place here in businesses and such, how much more parking are you anticipating that this area needing? And I know it's highly conceptual. I know it's probably throwing a dart at a dartboard as far as numbers go, but is it rising to the level of needing something like a parking structure, or is it?
Well, the way it's designed right now, there's a lot of things going on in that rendering, right? There's several new buildings and new developments that have outdoor dining space, restaurants, and things like that. So some of the options that they have there have a higher parking rate than, just a regular commercial retail. So it's really difficult for us to determine what is going to be needed there, because a lot of this is reliant on private developers coming in and proposing something, right? We just kind of showed what we would like to see, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be built exactly that way. But when a project does come forward as part of a private development in one of those areas, that will be something that we look at cohesively and comprehensively. I know I'm giving you kind of a general feedback here,
That's
but
kind of what I expected, but, so is there an effort going on now to see what types of developers / businesses are interested in coming to this area? I know we have a new economic development director on board now. Is that person engaging in that kind of activity right now?
yes, he is. He really hit the ground running on this, and so we have had a couple of interested developers come forth and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? Hey, here's the pretty picture. So there has been some level of interest there, but nothing has come forward in a formal plan yet. But the talks are continuing, yes.
I know I asked before. Since you had the stakeholder discussions, I assume also that talking to the people that actually live in the neighborhoods around there, what was their receptiveness to all this new development going on? Because they've seen it this way now for 20 years. And this could really change the picture. So are they predominantly on board with it, or do they have concerns about it? How'd that go?
Yeah, overwhelmingly, they were excited about it. They wanted all of that to happen tomorrow. Well, tomorrow
Except
in May
the
when we
parking
had the meeting.
garage.
Yeah, except the parking garage, yeah. So, but they were excited about it. Overall, they were saying that this was what they had hoped Cherry Hill Village would be when they bought their property 10, 12 years ago, is they wanted some place to walk around. The idea of a social district was mentioned at one point, and, they were really excited about that too. And more investment and more commercial opportunities in that area. So yeah, overall, they were excited. There were some concerns about traffic and about parking and some of those things. But we're also looking at not only this conceptual idea, but also making or working and partnering potentially with other areas of the township and doing shuttle services. So we're looking at not just having this area and people drive here and go here, but how can we bring people here without being a burden on the neighborhoods there? So we're trying to explore this project from a number of different angles so it can be successful. Yeah.
One of at the meeting we had back in, was it April or May now?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
One, the thing she mentioned is going through the plan and all that was mentioning, she mentioned like a microbrewery / restaurant over here on the Ridge Road side, I believe. And that'd be nice, but I'm wondering what's going on with the factory building at the Village Arts Factory? What's gonna happen with that building? Because to me, looking at that building, with the big glass windows and all that, that seems very conducive. I mean, there might be a parking issue, but it sounds like we could work it out. That building seemed very conducive to that type of usage, given what I've seen of other ones like that. Just a thought.
Well, the Village Arts Factory will continue, and part of the grant funding that we did receive through the ARPA funds, some of those funds are going to go into renovations for the Village Arts Factory.
I'm talking about the building right at the corner, not the new part, the factory, the original building. It's right there at the corner of Ridge and Cherry Hill.
Yeah, it's going for that building at that southwest corner. It's just east of the Village Arts Factory.
Was that part of the renovation stuff? Yeah, so yeah, that part of that building is going to be renovated as well. Yeah. Okay, I don't. Oh, okay, I don't know about that for sale sign there.
I thought it was already renovated.
Yeah, the Partnership for the Arts Building, that one's been renovated. Take a look here.
Here today. And I'd seen a for lease sign on it before.
I know they were looking for tenants for it or people to occupy it, but I didn't know.
So at the southwest corner, yeah, we can look into that. And just curious of whether it was intended to be a for lease sign instead. Yeah, we'll find out.
I don't have any other questions.
Is there any better plan to pave Napier Road?
I haven't heard of any plans for paving of Napier Road. I don't think so. And I think that one's under the jurisdiction of Washtenaw County, so I think paving that would be unlikely.
There's still dirt roads in Ann Arbor. They're probably not gonna.
At the township, at the building department, actually, a few years ago, there was a lot for sale, went there to check what can be built right at the corner of the Cherry Hill, 5 acre lot. Building department was not happy with what you guys are doing with Cherry Hill. We want to, left alone, we don't want all these people here, too much rush, too many people coming.
It's really hard to hear you, sir.
Time is coming when you guys are gonna ask that, start making nicer houses on this side of the town too. Those people who wanted to take, change the zoning, this and that, and they want to go that.
Yeah, and looking at aerial photos, it is pretty stark along the east and west sides of Napier Road and Canton and Superior Township. Superior Township, in that part of their township, they're zoned very rural. And they've been very successful with what they've wanted in their master plan and what they've been able to achieve in terms of the lower density and land preservation there. But with communities being able to zone themselves, there will be a contrast between communities like Canton that built our infrastructure decades ago based on a plan of higher density, and communities that are adjacent to us that may want to be more rural. In some cases, they may want to be more dense than us.
Else, Aaron?
Oh, I just have a quick comment about the parking garage. I hate the idea of a parking garage. I don't like the idea of a parking garage. But I realize that needing parking and bringing people to Cherry Hill Village is a good problem to have. And if a parking garage that isn't obnoxious is a solution, then it's definitely something that, we should consider. But I don't even think that we're there yet, because I think we need to figure out how to get more businesses, more activity in the village and bring and build some of the things that are going to bring people there. And so I think people should be patient and wait to see what it's going to look like before the collective freak out.
People need to understand that that drawing is just, it's not a site plan. It's, I don't mean to sound negative here, it's hopes and dreams right now. So it's not anything etched in stone, so.
And the other point of that is, we heard their concerns about the parking garage. So those are things that when we do, if it were to come to fruition as the parking structure as it's drawn there, then we would look at, okay, well, how can we mitigate or alleviate some of the impact to the neighbors, right? So we plant a lot of landscaping around it. We make sure that it's, we look at the hours of operation. We try to make sure that any of the illumination from the headlights aren't going to be directed right into somebody's second-story bedroom window. So, we would look at those things in a little bit more, in a careful context to make sure that we incorporate some of their concerns, and it's not just something like, well, it's on the plan, so we have to do it.
Well, that's one of the
We look at
downsides.
things and we
That's
try
one-
to make it better.
That's one of the downsides to doing, I appreciate what you guys did and making sure this is all open to the public and everything, but it's one of the downsides to putting something out in the public like that drawing, because people don't understand. They see that, and they see it in the paper, they see it in the news, and they think that means it's a done deal, and that's
Right.
what's happening and all that sort of thing, so. It's just about setting expectations and that sort of thing, so.
And that's why we had these open meetings and discussions, is so we could talk to them, and the people who were upset, we gave them an opportunity to come talk to us about this instead of just saying things to a computer screen.
It's a shame that they drew such a ginormous parking garage in the plan, because people do tend to fixate on what they see and not the conceptual ideas. So it's a shame, but I get it.
But for the most part, people seemed really excited about it, so we focus on that too.
I'll just be excited when the market gets open down there.
I want to know when the beer garden's going in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That phase one,
Yes, phase one, okay,
and
done.
bike
Number
parking
one
probably.
priority, yeah.
Actually, yeah, they didn't get that bus and drive us around.
There's no beer in this beer garden picture.
So Patrick, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about study sessions oh,
If I may just go back, was there anybody who had any thoughts or comments on the draft goals and objectives as they're written? And if you want to think about it a little bit longer and look at them a little bit more, you can send me thoughts later on. But overall, we seem good in that direction? Nodding, yes, good, excellent. Okay, great, thank you so much.
all right. So Patrick, you talked about adding some dates to the calendar for the rest of the year.
Yeah, as you see in the packet tonight, we're starting to go heavier on giving master plan materials, providing some info from Cherry Hill Village. And so having a work study meeting would be a good chance to go through a lot of those in more detail. And depending on what's proposed for the master plan, we could also mix in some ordinance things as well, just to keep, we don't want to go too far or too late into an evening with a meeting of overloading that, but just something, I think the master plan would probably take precedence just because we're at the point where more planning commission involvement is going to be requested now that we've gotten public participation and stakeholder meetings have been done. So, and we can think about this, we don't necessarily have to commit tonight, but what we're thinking going forward is if planning commissioners are available to start scheduling some work session meetings for the third Monday of the month, unless there's conflicts with calendars, in which case we can look for a more irregular schedule month to month just to get maximum participation.
Or wait till September. Me too.
Yeah, we can, yeah, we're still in the summer and people have plans, and September is usually when things start to get in a cycle with school year starting and students and teachers get into, a regular schedule, and I know with me, kid activities, those things start to schedule in. So September would be good. Our regular meeting is the second Monday in September because Labor Day will push it back a week. So if we wanted to, we could start in September, starting with the third Monday.
So we would meet Monday the 11th and Monday the 18th. Oh, I love you guys, but
Not check the
Come on,
calendar,
come on,
but
Patrick.
the last,
But you know the rule.
the last time I moved a meeting for a football game, it didn't work out so well for me, so.
Well, at least the
How long
one,
do you think the meetings will last? Like,
That's a good question. We could probably go into it thinking of a hard stop time, or,
An earlier start time, maybe?
probably depends on the subject matter at a particular time, though.
yeah, we could start earlier than 7. If,
the master plan advisory committee meetings, we're usually out of there at a pretty decent time, so.
yeah, we start at 5 and go to 7, so.
and we could send out an email just to get a straw poll, just so people have time to think about it and check their calendars. And then Commissioner Watkins, who's not here, can also chime in.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Very good. Is there anything else we need to discuss? Oh, we need to, I'm sorry, I skipped a section. We need to have public comment. Anyone from the public want to say anything that you didn't already say? Come on,
Speak now or
guys.
forever hold your peace.
All right. Yeah, we have a motion to adjourn by Commissioners Weber and support by Commissioner Cruz. Was that you, Commissioner Janowski? Okay. We have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Janowski. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope, I didn't think so. Thank you.